So we're going to respect everybody's time, and thank you for the people that join us here, both board members and community members, and thank you, Lisa, Spencer, Orca, for being here with us too. We're going to call the meeting to order, like I said, at 5:30. The purpose of this meeting today is to present our Washington Central School District budget and Articles of Agreement warning. We still have a few people coming online, so we're going to give them a couple of minutes, and we'll get started with the presentation. In the meantime, I'm going to share my screen while we're letting them in. And, let's see if I can, oops. There. Okay. Do you see anybody else, or we're good? Okay. Well, I wanted to start this meeting today just by reminding us all that supporting our school budgets on town meeting day, March 4th, is more important than ever. Your town clerks and our district clerk, Melissa, have any information that you might need tomorrow. Education is more, as we all know and agree here at this board, education is more than just learning facts and figures. It teaches us how to think, how to listen, and how to process different perspectives. It gives us that ability to understand, accept, and collaborate with people who may be different from us. It instills humility, strengthens our convictions, and gives us the courage to stand up for what is right. So, providing high quality and equitable education at a cost that is supported by all our taxpayers is not just a local effort here at Washington Central, but it's a state effort, and we are part of that here at our board. We know how we are all interconnected across the state. I want to start this forum by sharing our proposed budget and informing our communities how they can make an informed decision tomorrow. The expectations, even though we have very few people here, we have a brave soul with us. The expectations of conduct, both for in the virtual room and in the room here, is that we will be cordial to each other. There is no wrong questions, and we are here to answer any of the questions you have. I don't see a lot of people in either location, so I'm gonna guess that we don't need to stick to just 2 minutes per comment, but if you want to have a comment, we'll have a lot of time for questions at the end. The presentation that you're going to see right now, we will go over the timeline, what do we need to accomplish with our resources, and what were our schools gain from these resources. We'll talk about the budget framework, the Washington Central Unified Union School District mission, our core beliefs. We'll share with you some enrollment, student data, and resources, and we're also going to share the budget and the tax rates information for all of you. And lastly, we will share the budget warning and have a time for Q&A. So with that, I'm going to start. Should we do present? Yeah. Slideshow there, because sometimes it doesn't.
Give it a shot.
So where? Sorry. Can you
just hit slideshow at the top?
Okay. Just. All right. It seems to.
Well, let's make sure it loads up.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if, or maybe I stopped sharing on YouTube. For some reason, it doesn't like the Mac. It is showing on my screen. It is something with the MacBook. Maybe I'll stop the share. Do you mind, Stephen, doing it? 1 minute while we do some tech support here.
All right. Let me...
So I'll keep talking while Stephen is putting out the presentation. So budgeting is actually a year-round process that we do here at Washington Central, and it helps us actualize our mission and our strategic plan and funds also our values. We kicked off our budgeting processes for 25-26 with a budget, with a school board budget training, which is when our all members learn how the budget is developed, and they can ask questions and be informed about the process. We started that in September. And then we explained also what budget funding is in Vermont and the current, good?
You're gonna have to let people in off the waiting room.
People, in the waiting room. Okay, see here, admit. I got it. Okay, we had a few people waiting for us. Sorry, we're having some techie problems. I apologize. Okay, well, Spencer is getting us all.
We're good.
Welcome to the new people that have joined us remotely. Okay, so the board reviewed the level service draft for 25-26 budget in November, and it included a community engagement meeting to share the budget framework. The goal at that presentation was to help the board understand what the estimate cost is to support the current programs and the services that were happening in our schools. The board hosted additional community forums and provided time for Q&A for all of our forums. The community participated and provided input. The board approved a final, as you can see there, final budget on January 22nd. And then we had a community meeting and budget presentation on February 5th. Now we are at our informational meeting, and it's what we call our little public hearing. And then the next slide, please, Stephen. This is our mission statement. We want to underscore that the budget process should be grounded in our mission. The budget is a narrative that, when done well, should reflect the student needs and our community values. And that's what you see in the screen right now. The next slide is our core beliefs. I'm not going to read all of the small type, but we spent about 18 months really through this process, and this led us to our strategic plan. Our 5 core beliefs are humanity and justice, community and belonging, rigorous curriculum and instruction, well-being, transparent and responsible leadership, and community engagement and relationships. As we move to staying student-centered throughout the budget development process, we remember our why and kept three strategic plan goals at the heart of that. Keeping equity as a lens, we make sure to keep academic achievement, student outcomes, student health and safety, and humanity and justice central to our work. So here you can see this is our 3 main strategic plan goals: to build and nurture a culture of well-being and inclusivity, challenge, empower, and engage each student through evidence-based instructional strategies and curriculum in varied educational opportunities, and foster and commit to responsible leadership that engages the community and communicates transparently. The next slide, Natasha was going to join us today, but she is unable because of a work call, so I'm going to take her slide. So this is our equity definition for our school. Every student will have access to the educational resources and rigor they need at the right moment in their education across race, gender, ethnicity, language, disability, sexual orientation, family background, and/or family income. You can see here also that we have our policy committee has forwarded a policy on what equity is, and that's our policy C29. The board approved this policy, and that's the policy that drives equity in our district. The last thing that I was going to share on that slide is that we also have a Justice Coalition, and the Justice Coalition is made by members of the board, our superintendent, Jen Arcelor-Miller, who's our curriculum director, and we also have Shelley, who's our equity scholar, and we have one of our counselors, Ellen, and our social worker, Jamie, and I'm forgetting Steve, and Steve, our awesome social studies teacher in the middle school, right? And then with that, we are going to move the budget building goals. So the building goals of this budget is build a budget based on the framework from a multi-layer system of supports and educational quality standards, and focus on decision-making on programs and services that meet the goals of the strategic plan. With that, I'm going to pass it on to Chris to talk about enrollment.
Okay. Oh, thanks.
Sorry,
so-
I had one left. Sorry,
Oh,
Chris.
Go ahead.
So the budget parameters, I totally jump. So these were, every year the budget proposes parameters to our leadership team and to the community. And the parameters that are based in data and what we see that is working in our schools and how we want to also expand opportunities for our students. And also the impact that our decisions will have in our communities. So we wanted to remain under the per pupil spending threshold. We will continue to offer and develop the multi-layer system of supports and consider a configuration changes that support our criteria. As you know, the configuration committee started meeting again. We just had our last meeting February 19th, and our next meeting is going to be in March 19th. Frame budget decisions around meeting goals of the strategic plan, adhering to our core beliefs, frame programmatic decisions around education quality standards and equitable distribution of resources, and support accelerated growth for students from historically marginalized identities. And budget towards a long-term financial sustainability of our district. And now for real, Chris, it's your turn.
So as you can see from the enrollment figures, our populations across our district have steadily declined over the years, which creates multiple challenges in terms of not only budgeting, because a lot of our budget is based on the number of students that we have, but also developing programs that can meet the needs of all of our students across the district. So each of the local schools, the elementary schools, are experiencing and are expected to continue to experience either very slight decline or significant decline, and the same applies to U32, which has also been experiencing significant declines over the past several years and are expected to continue into the future. Next slide. So this chart also shows the trend for each of the elementary schools and U32, that these declines in student enrollment, which has been a difficulty throughout the state because of the declining population, will continue into the foreseeable future. And so with that, we are also considering different configuration for our schools, which is a committee that is working on that type of exploration as well this year and into the future. Now hand it over to Ursula.
So I'm going to talk about the frameworks that guided the budget development. And so the leadership team and the school board considered student needs, equitable distribution of resources, educational quality, and evidence-based practices to make decisions for the development of this budget. We leveraged our current strengths to take advantage of opportunities to develop a budget that meets the needs of our students in the face of many challenges. And it includes class size, educational quality standards, and the multi-layer systems of support. Next slide. This is a pie chart of our 25-26 budget, and it breaks it down and provides a visual presentation of the expenditures between each of the district-wide services and school-wide programs as a whole. As you can see, the largest portion of the budget is invested in school-wide programs. That's the blue pie slice. Then special education, the red pie slice, and the operations and maintenance of buildings, which is the green pie slice. Next slide. This is a table version of the pie chart that you just saw, so it gives the actual numbers of each of them. I'm just going to give people time to read it. Mm-hmm. Next slide. And now school programs. So this is Stephen's job.
Yes, I thought so. Right, so the way that we developed our budget was making sure that we allocated resources, primarily staffing, to each of our schools, and we built that around what are the optimal class sizes, and what are some of the standards that are shown to us in the educational quality standards. This allowed us to create a base level of staffing for each of our schools to meet our student needs. And then from there, we looked at what were the additional resources that were needed for students who needed more services, targeted intensive interventions. Were there any needs that were not being met by the ratios that we had here? And so when we did that, we were able then to staff each of the schools at a level that met the needs of the school, the needs of the students, so that they had, they were able to provide that, what we call a multi-layer system of support. And that allowed us to get a base funding formula for all of our students, and then what are the additional resources needed for all of those. Once we were able to determine that, then we looked at additional resources for keeping the buildings open, so operations, maintenance, transportation, all of those, and then we brought forth a budget to the board for approval. And so that when you look at our ratios of students and to the services that they needed, there were some impacts because of the declining enrollment. We did reduce services across several areas. And so you can see the proposed decreases that were here in each of the schools. I would also stress that as part of our conversation, we said that if a need changed during the school year, then we would revisit being able to meet those needs through our operating budget and through the fund balance if necessary. And so these reductions were to keep us at a base funding, but certainly if things changed during the year, we would look at ways to restaff a little bit of that need.
So now we're going to get into how all of this translates into an overall budget and how that translates into tax rates. And I have the unenviable job of trying to explain Vermont's education tax system to you. So the top line number, that first pairing you see is just the change in total expenditures. That's everything that we are planning to spend next year, and that is one of the numbers you're going to see on your ballot. So you see that's a total of a 3.75% increase. That's everything. The second set down is the revenue that comes in. Not all of the money we're planning to spend comes from property taxes or from the sales taxes. We have other revenue sources, particularly money we get from the state for special ed. You see there's been a real decrease in expected revenue. That is because last year when we used fund balance to help buy down the tax rate, that was realized in the revenue line, not in the expenditure line. And so we are going back to a budget that does not use any money from fund balance, and so that shows up as a decrease in revenue, which means that the total net spending below, which is the amount the total amount that we need to raise through the property tax system, is going up just shy of 6%. It's a little more than the total spending because of that use of fund balance last year. The good news is that next year we are back to level set without needing to worry about an impact from use of fund balance the previous year. One thing I also want to note on this as we get into what this means for the tax rates, I know there's been there have been a lot of proposals floating around. We don't really know what's going to come out of the legislature. The numbers we're going to present to you don't include any assumptions for a buy down of the tax rate or anything else. This is what we came in with in January before these proposals came on the table. So this is sort of our good faith estimate of what things will look like at the status quo. So then moving how this translates into a per pupil spending, we have, we calculate taxes based on, average, based on a per pupil number, which is a weighted pupil number. So in the pairs of numbers you see up here, the first pair is the long-term weighted average daily membership. This is the number of weighted pupils in the system, so it gives extra weight for students with economic disadvantages, may require resources, English language learners. There is some weight given for sparsity for small schools, and then also it costs different amounts to educate students at different stages of their careers, and so there are weights given for say high school students versus elementary school students. we have had a slight decrease in the number of weighted students, but that's not a really significant factor here. So you then see the second paring down is the local spending per long-term weighted average daily membership. This is another set of the numbers you are going to see on your ballot. This is the per student number, and this is what is used in the state formula to determine the tax rates. So you see that is that per student number is going up a little over 6%. It's $15,272 a total per student. That is below the excess spending threshold, so we are not going to have a tax penalty because of the spending rate. And then that finally is translated into an equalized tax rate, which is the tax rate before you start to adjust for changes in property values. So that has dropped fairly significantly year to year. That is a bit of a mirage. So don't put too much weight on that. Because sort of as your property values go up, you need a lower rate to generate the same amount of money. That's why you get that you decrease there. Just a note on a change that happened this year from the state level. Last year we had a very significant increase in property values, and so we had this sort of whiplash effect of getting, we got the per pupil spending numbers early, and then we got the property value adjustment later, and it's, people sort of thought, we thought we were going to be in much better shape than we were. So to avoid that, the state basically changed from a one-step process to a two-step process, where they first made an adjustment to the state average, and then your town was adjusted beyond that. So some of the numbers are going to look really different from last year. You're going to see that especially in the non-homestead property tax rate. That is partly because of that two-step process. I would focus much more on what is the actual dollar number. So now getting to the tax rate projections. One thing I want to spend a little bit of time on here is what the common level appraisal is, how it's changed, because this explains why our different towns end up paying different amounts of money and how the tax rates are changing differently. So because Vermont has us all pay into a common pool and then take money out of that common pool, you really need property values to be assessed fairly, and that gets really challenging when different towns are reassessing at different times. All of our towns currently need reassessments. They're scheduled to happen between 2025 and 2030. And so you can imagine if you have two homes that in reality would sell for $300,000 right now, should be assessed at $300,000. One of them just was reassessed, is at that level. The other was assessed 10 years ago. They're assessed at $200,000, and that's fairly accurate to sort of how much the property values have changed. The house that was just reassessed would end up paying 1.5 times as much, and you don't want that for a matter of fairness. And so what we do is we look at the state does a set of town by town studies, looking at the actual property sales versus the appraisals, and then adjust the tax rate so that everyone would be paying the number of dollars they would be paying if their property had been assessed recently. So you see all these numbers for the CLA, that this is the ratio of the assessed values to the actual values. So you see that in the 24-25 year, most of our towns were assessed at about 70 to 72% of their actual value. Worcester was a little higher. For this coming year, it's dropped. We're in the sort of in the 60% range. Worcester has had a very significant change in their common level appraisal, which we'll see the effects of in a second. So we can go next. So this is where we then put this all together into what our tax rates are. So you see the first column on the left is the adjusted CLA. This is the town level adjustment to bring that brings everyone's property values to the same level. So starting with the same base tax rate for the district, you see Then the second column, estimated tax rates for FY 25-26. That is the actual tax rates that we are estimating currently based on based on all the information we have from the state. You then have a comparison to to what the tax rates were for this prior year, and then the change. And you see that for 4 of our towns, we are ranging from a decrease of 4.6% in Berlin to an increase of a little over 2.5% for Calais. And then I mentioned for Worcester is a significant outlier. There's been a combination of significant increases in property values, and there was because it's small, it's more subject to some to fluctuations depending on which properties are included in that calculation. In the past year, there was there were some real changes in the properties included. So if we go to the next, we see then we see what the actual dollar value is. We've shown the total tax for a $100,000 home. I realize there aren't a ton of $100,000 homes out there, but I think for purpose of doing the multiplication, starting at an even number makes it a lot easier to do the math. And then we've shown the changes for a $100,000, $200,000, and $300,000 home for each of our towns, so that people can get a sense of what kind of change they'd be looking at. So with that, I'll turn it over to Flora to talk about the impact for people paying based on income.
Yeah, thank you, Zach. Thank you, Zach. So here you can see the district income rate has gone down due to the increase in the income yield from 10,110 to 12,260. If the legislature, I'm not going to stay too focused on the slide that you see there. I'm going to let you read the different limitations, but what I do want to tell you is that if the legislature changes the income yield or the statewide income rate, then the district income rate could change, right? So this is why we keep telling you that this is our best guess estimate. It's my understanding from talking to leadership that the legislature is going to spend the next 2 weeks sort of setting the yield, and cross all your fingers and toes so that it's a good yield for us. The household that files for income-based property tax discount will receive a credit for the year 26 property tax bill for the amount of their education property taxes for that year. If it exceeds the applicable percent of their 2024 reported household income. And that's the part that becomes confusing, because it's 2 years before that. This means that the household reporting earnings less than $47,000 in 2024 will only pay the statewide income rate of 2%. This discount right now applies to a house side value of $400,000. Households reporting earnings between $47,000 and $90,000 will only pay the district income rate of 2.58%. This discount applies on households valued up to $400,000 too. The households reporting earnings between $90,000 and $128,000 will pay based on a combination of district income rate and the town homestead tax rate. This discount applies on the house side value up to $225,000. Next slide. Here you can, if you go into our PDF, you can't click in the presentation right now, but if you go into our resources, and it's linked in the Front Porch Forum post that we just put and what we send through the IC campus to everybody, you can click on those links and they can take you to the resources that you need. Nobody here, including Stephen or Suzanne, claims to be an expert in income sensitivity, but we do want you to have those resources. If we can't make the calculations for you, but we want you to have the resources in case they are helpful. With that, I'm going to pass it on to Patrick.
Thank you. The budgets that we have presented to you today enables our district to provide a quality education for our kids and reflects our commitment to academic excellence, safe, inclusive, and healthy schools. We, the board, are committed to working with our communities to develop a long-term plan to educate our children, and we are committed to collaboration and earning community trust. The budget that we presented reflects these values. I wanted to point out also that our district is a sending district to the Central Vermont Career Center that educates kids in technical skills. CVCC also has a budget up for vote tomorrow, so please vote on that budget as well. We're not permitted to ask you to vote for any of these budgets, but we hope that you can see from the presentations that our proposed budgets are in line with our mission and core beliefs, and we ask that you support our schools. So please vote tomorrow.
Thank you, Patrick. So with that, you can see the warning was just a minute ago there. That's what you're going to be seeing tomorrow. We did not include the Career Center warning, but you would have one for them too. So with that, we'll just open it up for questions. I'm going to start with the people here in the room with us because we have more people online. And just asking if you have a question, please let us know.
I'm Linda. I'm here in the room.
Hold on one sec. We'll get you a mic so that people can hear you.
I think I'm alone in the room here as a member of the public, but I see some people online. I know that I wanted to thank you all for all the work that you put in, by the way. It's a thankless job, and budgeting isn't easy, and it might not be your highest priority and ends up taking all of your time. So I really want to thank you. I know you made a big effort to listen to the communities, and Steve went around to all the schools, and I wonder what the results of that kind of listening, what reactions you had to that.
Well, thank you, because Linda, you were one of my regulars, which I appreciate. But I know that in speaking with the community and those that came out to talk to me during some of the coffee conversations, conversations with staff as well, I mean, we feel like we've got the funding to be able to provide for the needs of our kids. We would always want more. I mean, I think that that's always a general theme for any school budget, is that there's more that we would want. But I also know that there's some areas that we need to focus on. How do we deliver those services? Nursing is a good example of that, is that we did cut back some of our nursing services because of the number of students in the buildings, but we do need to make sure that our students and our staff have access to nursing. So we're working on, with a team of people to make sure, what are those things? When are the nurses in the buildings? What access would they have to maybe telenursing if we had within the district? But what are those needs, and how do we meet those? Are something that we're focused on for the rest of this year as well. And so I think that's a good example of where we know that while we have some cuts in it, we know that we need to make sure that the services are there for students. And should those services needs change, we need to be able to be flexible enough to say that those changes and those needs are met during that time. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, we're gonna open it up for people in the cyberspace. If you wanna raise your hand, if you have a question about the budget or have a comment. I don't see any hands up, but I will wait. Goodness. Okay, don't be shy. Wow, this is a first. We do have about 26 people online, so yeah. Okay. Can they hear us?
There is somebody who put it in the chat.
Thank you so much for it.
They definitely can hear you.
Okay.
Oh,
okay.
yep. So one of the
good.
questions in the chat were, when are any recommendations or findings from the configuration committee expected?
So as the configuration committee continues to move, right now we're gonna we have just concentrated in our agreed upon facts, for lack of a better word. There's other members of the committee here with me too. So we are expected to continue to progress. So at the next meeting, we would have a presentation from our, not necessarily the leadership team, but from central office about what is the outcomes that we want for our kids. We are working separately in what are the facilities. So we've started to create these tables that show what is the state of each of our facilities. And you can see our backwards plan is linked in the configuration website. We just changed the configuration website also so that you can send questions to the configuration committee, and we also started a link there which we would keep track of any question and answer that one, so we would have a correspondence just dedicated to the configuration committee. So what am I missing? So the deadline for the deadline is for us, again, we're looking at the same September deadline to make decisions, but it would be too early to tell you exactly how. We are going to start to work with the steering committee next week, and actually not this week, and then the communications committee is going to kick in too, but the process is on its way, and you can continue to inform the process.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think one thing that I would add is that the work of the configuration committee is also to look at what's the program expansions that we can do. We've talked about this many times, is that in the first round of us looking at configuration, we didn't really define well what is the programming that we want to make sure that all of our students have, and what does that look like across our district. And so that's some of the work that we're going to be presenting in the next couple of meetings is what does that programming look like, and agree upon like what are the things that we want as a district, not just in the classroom, but what do we want in our before and after school programs? What do we want in our co-curricular programs? Those kinds of things are very important to our community, and we want to make sure that we cover those things.
Yeah.
I know
So,
there was another question in the chat as well that was explain the model school grant that you recently received. I think what you're referring to is the community schools grant. So that grant is an initial grant for us to explore the community school model. And what a community school model is how do we create connections between our schools and our local communities to enhance the education of the students there. There's a lot of different ways that this can go. So this grant really is the way for us to begin that process of what do we need as a community. So many times community school grants are used to help improve attendance, to improve access to health care. There's a lot of different things that a community school can end up doing. And so this is our way of getting started on that process. So we're able to commit some resources to what does the community need, what do our students need from our community, and how do we start to match those together. And so I see the question is, how does the community school grant work relate to the configuration study? Well, I would say that they're symbiotic, I think would be the word that I would use. So the community school grant isn't reliant on the configuration, but our configurations could help our community school programming, I think is the way that I would describe it right now. So I would say that the beginning of this is looking at how do we start creating some after-school opportunities for our kids to connect with our community, and how do we get those programs from the middle and high school spread out to the elementary schools as well. I don't want to oversell because this is the very beginning of the process, but there are more resources available over time as we start to identify the needs of our community and our kids.
And I will add to that, Edie, that what we're working right now, like Stephen said, is in parallel to the, so it's not defined by the configuration committee, right? This is work that will be presented to the configuration committee, and we continue to inform. There are ways for community to be involved. We have put some, and we are just going to hire a coordinator right now, and that coordinator, if you look at the. And I'll put the link on the chat, on the chat too. The grant will focus right now in 3 key areas, and one was the rigorous and relevant and inclusive curriculum for all our students across our district. The other one was, expand our community health and wellness services and remove barriers that might cause for learning. And then the third one was that, as Stephen was referring to, a comprehensive third space programming to foster community partnerships and offer learning opportunities beyond the school day. So those would be 3 things that helps us also meet our strategic plan goals and makes us a little bit more flexible in how we provide more opportunities for our kids.
Yep, so I posted a link in the
Oh, there.
chat that takes you to the advisory committee that's being formed, and the interview committee to get that process started. So I would just encourage anybody that's out there right now who may want to be a part of this to look at that. And if you have questions, just reach out to us. There's some people to contact on that page as well.
Yeah. And thank you for the nice note too there, thanking for the work.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't see any other, I don't want to keep people here, so if we don't have any other questions, please remember to vote. And we're always here to answer any questions and stay tuned in the state conversation too.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have? No. Okay. So if without objection, I would bring this meeting to an end by consensus because it's just an informational meeting. I don't need a motion.
Wait,
So-
was someone trying,
I
was
was-
someone asking if they could be heard?
Oh, was there
Could
somebody?
okay, hang on, Ross, I think we're,
Oh, there's 7 new comments.
But it is not coming through.
yeah, I think that we're not hearing it.
Oh,
We're working on
Russ
it.
is trying to speak. Oh, Russ, please go ahead or post it on, I don't know why we wouldn't be able to hear it. I apologize.
Oh, wait, you're not.
Is it just
Okay.
that this?
Do we
isn't
need to
turned on?
turn the owl up?
I apologize, Russ, we can. It's on? Huh.
Ross could,
Yeah, Russ, could you type it? I promise that we can hear you here. Linda is our witness that no sound is being emitted.
Sorry about that.
Sorry. Yeah, they can
So
hear
is
us.
it just
but
that our,
Could we raise the volume of the owl, or that won't make a difference? Oh, it's not the owl. Oh, they can hear him. That's so weird.
it's, well, it's
Can
just
you
that,
can you post your question, Rose, or somebody that can, Russ?
yeah, all right, so,
Oh,
If he wants to.
oh, there.
okay.
Yeah, we can hear you now, Russ, here.
Oh, okay, great. Hey, thanks for making the accommodation so you could hear me here. Sorry that there was some problems. I've got a couple of curious questions, and I admit that I'm not as I wish I could have been a little bit more tuned in a few places. I know that I really wanted to join one of the coffee sessions, but my work took me out of town on the days that they were at like East Montpelier. I have 2 young kids that one that attends East Montpelier as a first grader, and the other one that'll be attending the kindergarten in the next year or two. So certainly, I have a vested stake, as many others that have school age children as well. So my questions are certain. They're coming from a place of curiosity. I just want to kind of start with that. But I was surprised, right? First question number 1 is, I just want to lay to rest for myself. Are there any reasons why, like, the way the timing of the information as it comes out is like, maybe a day or within a few days before the actual vote occurs? Like, I noticed that last year, like, the information kind of got posted after like ballots were sent out. So, if you weren't really paying attention, you could just say yes and not really be clued into maybe you didn't want to vote yes, or maybe you want, that kind of stuff. So I'm just trying to see, is there an opportunity to, bring forth some of that information sooner so that if there are some pre-ballots that are sent out that, people are making informed decisions and not just voting because they don't know the full details? Like, could that be part of the vote that's getting captured, indirectly?
So, Rose, I want to make sure that I'm understanding your question. You want like a survey before the vote, or did you receive the trifold and the information online, or have access to our website?
Yeah, so like I'm just voicing, maybe it's not a big concern, but I feel like I'm voicing it on other feedback that I'm getting as far as just talking with others in the community that, if you're not really paying attention, you could be getting your ballot ahead of time and just saying, oh yeah, I'll vote yes on the budget or whatever. But then maybe after the fact, you'll get your information like the week before, but the ballots had already been sent out, and you might not want to vote yes. And if, it might be too late. You might have already pre-voted. And I'm just worried is that something that is like, could be suppressing certain voices that should be wanting to be heard in the community.
Yeah, we definitely want to work on that, but we've been working on the budget since September and putting information out for the budget since then. The report is something, and the trifold that we just sent, we have to wait for numbers from the state in order to calculate our tax, which makes it we don't get those numbers until December 1st, which makes it really hard. And then on January, we're also up to January, we were still having different student numbers from the AOE. So in order for us to put information out, this process is not just our own timeline, it's the state timeline. So, but we're always available for questions, and by all means, I'm not trying to be defensive. Like, if what we need is to be putting even more information out, that we have tried as much as we can in different, just having it on the newsletters for the schools, having it in Stephen's newsletter, of the district newsletter, and
I think you don't really get we don't get like the final recommendations, I guess. Maybe and if I'm not seeing it correctly, I'm like I said, this is all curiosity based. Like, I don't necessarily see the final recommendations as to like what, like the budget, like what does the final numbers actually do? You don't kind of get that until, just like you say, the trifold comes out the week before, but actual voting ballots had already been sent out. By that time.
And the voting ballots didn't go out this year, unfortunately, right? You had to solicit your school budget ballot. So it's Chris.
Yeah, and Ross, the basic parameters of this budget, including the number, we've worked on it, and then we have to take a final vote toward the later part of January in order to meet our posting requirements. So the information in this presentation, I bet, has been given 2 or 3 or 4 times in the same format, the same information, over the course of I bet 2 months. And so the information is out there, and it has to be out there in order to meet our posting requirements, and then for printing the ballots. So the final number it's been available since late January. When the board finally, took a final vote to say, this is what we're going to present to the community. So we don't know, given our time constraints in terms of posting and warning, the budget and ballot matters, we really can't do it much differently, I don't think, because we have legal constraints in terms of when we have to publish what we're going to do and finalize what we're going to do. So that there's this time warning that we meet.
Okay, well, thank you. I think there's maybe some whether it's in like the way like newsletters or email, I think there's some opportunity to say, like, hey, guess what? We've published some early information. It's located here, and be a little bit more, I guess, transparent. It's a community engagement forum. I'm just providing that engagement to say that, like, it wasn't as crystal clear to me that, like, thinking about last year and how, there was such an emotional reaction, right? Budget failed, all this kind of stuff. Then to see things go up again.
I don't get my camera off.
Yeah. So I think that there's just maybe some opportunity to just continue to improve on that, because what's not as clear to me until you get that trifold, or you don't get that until the very end. And I just remember that having I remember thinking, wow, this is at the very end of the process. It feels like it could be a little bit more better. And if it's transparent, great. I'll do better myself. I just don't think that's, I don't think I just speak for myself. I think I speak for others as well. And, and in that vein, right, the last other part of my question is that I realize this is kind of towards the end. So, maybe it's in this configuration committee. I'm not sure where, but in the private sector, which is where I have always worked in my life. We always have to match, expected revenue with head count and all this kind of stuff. And I'm just not, not sure that that's really felt like, okay, we got declining enrollment, we got all this stuff. Like, how do you not, there's got to be a better reconciliation of that rather than just telling people like, we got to come out with the same services. We got to have the same administrative and overhead for less people. Like that would not typically fly in the private sector. And I'm wondering, how that's being balanced in this. And again, like I said, I've got kids in education. I want them to have a great education. But I'm thinking there's an opportunity to balance overhead and indirect costs differently than what's actually happening, so that it's not just, we're just going to keep raising everybody's taxes.
Ross, I would say from the superintendent's seat, what you're talking about is what our configuration committee is wrestling with. It's what our state legislature is wrestling with right now. I think that you are exactly right when you say that this is an issue that needs to be addressed, and that's the issue that is really on the forefront of the state's mind right now. And so I would say I wish I had an answer for you, because I would be first in the state to have that. But I would just say, thank you for pointing out the obvious that we're really wrestling with as a configuration committee and as a state.
What happens
I would say
tomorrow
to
if
that, Russ,
the vote fails? Like, what's going to be the 1, 2, or 3 things that you're likely to change right away if it fails?
Well, I think you're addressing one of those things in your comments, which is overhead. So we would be really looking at what can we do in terms of creating maybe a little bit larger class sizes? What can we do in terms of reducing some of the programming that we're doing? I would say that I would hate to refer back to last year because that was a tough year, but we put everything on the table when we looked at reducing last year, and we would have to do the same.
And I gotta say, Russ, that we've been working really hard to have a year-round budgeting, and exactly what you were saying, quality, equity, and sustainability, which actually the interim secretary took from us, right? Like, that is something that our board has been working and really trying to manage. The way that Stephen and the leadership team propose a budgeting this year would mean that we would have to go back to completely ground zero, because it would be different amounts for the school, because we gave each principal the ability, I don't want to speak for you, Stephen, on how we would do it, but it would create a lot of uncertainty in an already very uncertain time in our state. It will send the wrong message too. So I'm not trying to tell you how to vote, but I do want to tell you that it is very different than being in a private institution. We absolutely want to be responsible and really careful of how we use the resources that we have. And while our structure might not be as nimble as we need it to be yet in order to get to it doesn't necessarily mean by having a much smaller structure each year, the needs of our students are different, right? We take all of our blueberries, and we can't not take, I think most people remember, not everybody knows this book, but it's just part of, public education is an investment that we have in our communities, and it's a public good that we all have to, do our best to be efficient, but also to do our best to support it in order to have a thriving democracy. So I'm not saying that the balance is, that to spend all the money either, but that we have to represent what drives our district is those principles of equity, quality of education, and sustainability. So we will continue to work towards that. Anything that we need to know from you would be helpful, and just please get involved even earlier in our process so that you can be part. And I would encourage you to be, part of our configuration committee conversations too, and come and do public comment for us, because that would be super helpful, right?
No, I will. I mean, I remember saying it to myself last year that I need to be a part of it. And here I'm sort of feeling those same things again, where I definitely want to be a part of it. Again, it's this whole thing. It's a tough job. Appreciate what you guys are doing and everything. It was, like I said, it was just kind of a shocking thing for me to kind of see, and it was a great opportunity for me to come in and to sort of say, like, wow, even after last year's increase, to come again in the next year, even with not a huge increase, but still an increase, didn't seem to match, for me at least, like all of that public comment that we had heard, and the summaries of that. So when the individual asked the question earlier, which I thought was great, about, hey, when you did your coffee sessions and all that stuff, what was the comment? I was expecting to hear like, oh wow, we've appreciated that continued focus on, like, how do we continue to streamline while still maintaining our pillars and values and so forth. And that wasn't the case. And so it just means that I'm going to ask the question now, because I didn't get a chance to last year, and it gives me that chance now to sort of say, okay, I'll get involved. I think it's an opportunity to talk about it a little bit more, because it doesn't seem to match fully with what the community is saying in terms of this, what you're saying as a configuration community, and what's actually being put out. At least that's just my opinion.
Thank you, we appreciate it, really, yeah. And we need your voice in our configuration. Okay, any other comments? Any other brave souls? Okay, I'm for real gonna bring the meeting to an end. Thank you, board members, for being here. Thank you, community, especially for engaging with us. And again, thank you, Spencer, and thank you, Orca, sorry, I don't know your name, for being here and bringing information to our communities. And thank you, Lisa, for always taking our minutes.
Yep.
Okay.
Encourage your neighbors to vote, please.
Please, yeah, please vote. Okay. Good evening, everybody.